Today's mini lecture is on presentation skills, specifically how can we use slides or PowerPoint, if that is your preference, to enhance our presentations. Now we'll be looking at this through an academic approach or an academic perspective. So specifically, how can university students use slideshows when they're asked to give presentations in class? So first of all, we have to think about the core purpose. This is fairly obvious. It means that as a student, you don't want to wander off the path. You want to make sure you close out the goal of the assignment. So you have to be first clear on your purpose. One method that I promote to students is when you are clear on that purpose, when you've decided, okay, this is what my job is, this is how I'm going to do it, take a post-it note, write down my purpose is at the top, underline it twice, and then clearly state your goal, your purpose, your outcome that you're aiming towards. And then whenever you're doing work connected to your research, your reading, your group work, or building out the slides themselves for the presentation, keep that little reminder front and center. I actually will take the post-it and put it on my notebook or put it right on the side of my computer screen. And then I just kind of reread it at intervals to keep my focus really sharp. Second main point here, simple and clear is better when you're dealing with slides. And the reason why this will be shown to be true is because if your slides are too text heavy, they're going to be a distraction. And you really don't want the listeners, the audience, to be spending too much time reading the slide. You want them more to focus on you. The slide is just there to support you, right? So by keeping it simple and clear, we achieve this. Now, another point to consider is that we still do have a structure to honor here, and we're still going to stick to that structure primarily that we've already established, where it does loosely follow the idea development that you would see in an essay. So you have to have a strong introduction. There should be a hook statement. You need a clear thesis, which is going to kind of directly guide your listener to understand how you're going to prove your purpose, and then what the main body sections will be for your talk. So you can use slides to highlight that structure. You could even use the word hook and then have one word after the hook, and then you might use a story or an anecdote or a personalized example to kind of rope in and get the buy-in from your audience. So this next point is also very important. Consistency is key. And what I mean by this is, because you're working in a group setting, you really need to communicate well with each other, and your slides should look seamless. They should not have different sized fonts. They should not have different color schemes or color patterns. Everything should be following the same essential plan. Consistency, consistency, consistency. And finally, it's also very important that you do think about who your audience is, as we learned in the Dolan article about effective presentation skills. Knowing your audience will affect your performance and your method of presenting. So is it a really big classroom? Is it a smaller classroom? Are you presenting to the teacher alone? Are you presenting what's the medium? Is it through Zoom? Is it in person? All of these factors will affect even how you build out your slides and how central the slide support becomes to the entire process. Okay, so those are kind of, that last slide was looking at core ideas surrounding purpose. Now let's talk about some of the specifics about how we want to build our slides and the parameters that will become our slide guide. Number one, large and clear is better. Obviously, you want your fonts to be easy for the audience to see. For this particular slideshow, my upper level font is 37, like the title font up here, and my kind of subpoints or subtitles are at 25. So you want to make it nice and big, nice and clear. Another thing I should mention on point number one is, don't change fonts. If you pick Arial or whatever font you decide to go with, again, be consistent and stick with it throughout. So now it's also important to think about each line. And the rule of thumb is 6 to 7 words maximum per line. If it's more than that, it becomes cognitively difficult, or more challenging anyways, to read. And what'll happen there is, as the audience is reading through the entire slide, they're not listening to you anymore. Or they may be listening, but their attention is divided. So keep it short per line. Also, you don't want too much on each slide. So you should have, again, a maximum, I'd say, of 6 points per slide. I usually try to stick to 4 or 5 myself, but we can say that 6 will be the maximum. And just to let you know, all of these parameters will be included on the rubric for the marking of this particular second group presentation. So these parameters become rather important. Okay, so pick a template. I like simple templates. Don't pick something that's too flashy. In my opinion, that can also become a distraction. Keep it simple and push forward with it. And then as well, if you are going to have a few different colors, 2 to 3 should be your maximum. And the colors, just like with our annotation process, like we've been doing our annotation practice, your colors should have a thematic connection. It's not random, right? There should be a method to your process. Okay, moving on. So now we want to talk a little bit about risks and rewards. This might also be paraphrased as the do's and the don'ts of using slides. So I do like animations, as you can see, but again, I don't think that you should get too crazy about the animations that you choose. So I go with the classic acronym here, keep it simple. And sometimes they say keep it simple, stupid. I don't like that one. So I just say keep it simple, students. And so just keep it simple, guys. If you're going to use the animation of having things come in on your click, that works effectively because you kind of limit things. You stop things on that first point. You can talk about the point, fill it out, and then when you're ready, boom, you move to the next one. So it's also important for us to discuss citations and what are the risks and rewards attached to using citations. So we've been developing our methodology around citations, and what I would say is we want to think about relevance first. And what I mean by relevance is your audience hasn't read the articles that you have. So putting an author's name up there, when you put the name up there, it doesn't really mean something. Think about how Duckworth presented in the talk about grit that we watched earlier this week. Basically, the way she made her citation relevant was that she mentioned the university first, Stanford University. She used the organizational name first to give credibility and to give weight because everybody knows Stanford is a good school. Then she added a little bit more context by saying that the researcher Carol Dweck came up with this idea of growth mindset. So that's the method I like. If you do want to bring the author in, use the organization first and make sure you explain the context to make it relevant for your audience. Now also, for this second group presentation, your final slide will be a reference list, a simplified reference list at the end of your slide. Now, of course, you will also submit your outline and a completed in-depth reference list at the end. So I think that adding the reference list as your last slide or maybe as your second to last slide is quite powerful because it does show I've done my research. And even at a glance, people in the audience will be able to look at the types of sources you're using. Because those APA references, it becomes quite obvious right away whether you're looking at a gold standard like a journal article that's recent, or whether you're looking at something that might be considered a lower standard source. And now we're kind of linking back in some of these ideas that have been mentioned throughout the presentation, but I really believe that the reward of keeping it simple is that it ends up supporting the speakers, right? So simple supports the speakers. And what I mean by that is, again, it doesn't steal away the focus. It allows you to lay out your ideas step by step and then flesh them out and explain them in depth to the audience. Now, yeah, again, so point 3 and point 4 are supporting each other here. Simple keeps it clear and makes it accessible. And we want to enhance, not steal the focus. So this kind of loops back to talk about the length of the amount of words you're putting on the slide, the number of words overall that end up on your entire screen. We don't want too many words there because we don't want to have a heavy cognitive burden for the audience. We want them to be listening and focusing on what you're saying. Now, this last point is really important, and this is a little bit of a tip at feedback as well. When I'm watching your group presentations as an instructor, I really want to see an equal measure of time between each of the members. So on this upcoming presentation, this will be taken into consideration under your preparation category for marking. So if I notice that one member of the group only speaks for 30 seconds and then other members speak for a much larger chunk of time, every member of the group will suffer a slight deduction because you haven't done your group work properly to make sure everybody has the right amount of balance in their chance to develop their ideas. So balance the time between the members. Okay, so here we are arriving at the end of this talk. Here's the call to action for today. This is your challenge. I want you to use the methods that I've just explained here, and they will help and support this group presentation number 2. So normally a great way to end your talk as well is to open up the floor to questions and comments. So you might say something like this: okay, we've reached the end of our journey. You know what your call to action is. Now I'll take your questions and comments. Okay, everybody, wonderful. I hope this has been a helpful presentation, and we're using it as a comparative. I'm going to present physically in person in class. You're going to watch this video, and you're going to try to find the differences, the similarities, but at the same time make an evaluative judgment as to which method is more powerful and why.